Sean Combs personally chose him out of every rapper in New York City, said he reminded him of Biggie, said he was the future of Bad Boy Records, and the streets agreed. But the same world that made him a star also pulled him into a single night that cost him everything: his freedom, his career, and eventually his country. While Diddy rebuilt his empire and kept celebrating, this man sat in a prison cell for nearly a decade, wondering if loyalty had been the biggest mistake of his life. Back in 1996, 17-year-old Jamal Michael Barrow was already headed down a dangerous road, carrying pain that had been building up since he was a little kid. 10 years earlier, his mother, Frances Myvitt, had brought him from Belize to Crown Heights, Brooklyn, hoping America would give her son a better life. But the damage had already started long before they ever touched New York soil. Back home, Jamal's father, Dean Barrow, a powerful attorney and rising politician, had basically walked away from him to start another family. And that abandonment stayed eating at Jamal for years. Later on, Jamal admitted that hearing his father describe his other children as kids born out of love crushed him inside. To him, it felt like he was the unwanted child. That kind of rejection hit deep, and it planted anger in him early. Brooklyn may have offered more opportunities than Belize, but life definitely wasn't sweet. His mother cleaned houses just to survive, and Jamal spent most nights sleeping on a couch inside a cramped apartment. There were no family vacations, no extra money laying around, not even enough cash to catch a movie with friends. So while his mother was trying to hold things together at home, the streets slowly started raising him instead. Before long, Jamal got pulled into running with the Decepticons, a feared Brooklyn crew named after the villains from Transformers. Back then, Flatbush was so violent, people barely even called it Flatbush anymore. Folks called it Gatbush. Shootings, robberies, drug hustling, all of it was normal out there. On the block, Jamal started going by the name Shine. He said the name meant to enlighten people. In his mind, he wasn't just another reckless street kid. He saw himself like the wise dude from Boys in the Hood, somebody trying to speak knowledge while surviving chaos at the same time. But the streets got real for him fast. In 1996, Shine got into a brutal fight with another kid. The situation escalated quick, and suddenly the other dude pulled out a gun and shot him. The bullet ripped through his shoulder, leaving behind a huge 6-inch scar that would stay with him forever. That moment changed everything. Laying there bleeding forced Shine to finally see how close he really was to dying. Later, he admitted that getting shot humbled him in a way nothing else ever had. Before that, he never really understood the importance of walking away from situations or seeing the bigger picture. The gunshot woke him up. After surviving that shooting, Shine started trying to straighten his life out. He finished high school, enrolled in a computer program at City Tech, and picked up a job as a bike messenger to pay for classes. To him, there were only two roads available: hustle illegally or work honestly. And after almost losing his life, he made a decision to stay away from drug dealing and street crime altogether. So every day, he rode an 18-speed bike from Brooklyn into Manhattan, weaving through traffic while trying to survive the city grind. The work was rough. Taxi drivers nearly clipped him constantly, and office workers treated him like he was invisible or beneath them. But somewhere in the middle of all that struggle, music started finding him. At first, it was just random rhymes scribbled onto the back of his messenger clipboard. His mother thought they were just poems. But soon, the writing became non-stop. He'd write during class, in bathrooms, anywhere ideas hit him. The words just kept pouring out. Years later, Shine barely even remembered the actual rhymes from that time, but he still believed some of those early verses were among the best he ever wrote. Music had always lived inside him anyway. Growing up in Brooklyn's little Caribbean neighborhood, Shine used to stand on chairs in huge crowds just to catch glimpses of live performances. He watched legends like Earth, Wind and Fire, and Shaka Khan perform while soaking up reggae, calypso, and soul music all around him. Those moments stayed with him. Deep down, he always dreamed about standing in front of thousands of people himself one day. Ironically, Shine had actually been a quiet, shy kid growing up, but after surviving a gunshot, fear stopped existing for him. something inside him completely shifted. By 1997, he had developed this almost supernatural confidence in his talent. He genuinely believed he could stand beside the best rappers alive and hold his own. Later on, he described it as a sudden burst of super talent mixed with pure certainty. At the time, though, he was still just Jamal Barrow, a hungry Brooklyn kid chasing record label cars through New York streets on his bicycle, hoping somebody important would finally stop and hear him rap. And once people heard him, they couldn't ignore him. His deep, gritty voice sounded shockingly similar to the notorious B.I.G. The comparison instantly grabbed attention. Both men came out of Brooklyn's rough streets, both had Caribbean roots, and both carried that same heavy baritone delivery. Only months after Biggie's murder in Los Angeles, Shine tested his music publicly inside a barbershop on Church Avenue in Little Caribbean. The timing helped and hurt him at the same time. On one hand, people immediately started buzzing about him because of how much he sounded like Biggie. But on the other hand, those comparisons became a huge shadow hanging over his career before he even had the chance to fully establish his own identity. Still, the people in the neighborhood loved him, and in a Brooklyn barbershop, praise actually meant something. Those spots were brutally honest. If somebody was trash, they were getting laughed right out the chair. Word about Shine spread fast through the city. Soon, legendary music executive Robert Don Pooh Cummins, the same man known for discovering Foxy Brown, heard about this kid from Brooklyn everybody couldn't stop talking about. Once he finally listened to Shine rap, he instantly knew the talent was real. Don Pooh eventually showed up to that same Church Avenue barbershop and offered to manage him and take his music to major labels. And that was it. Suddenly, labels everywhere were scrambling to sign Shine, even though he hadn't even recorded a real demo yet. The buzz was that crazy. Out of everybody chasing him, Shine connected most with Sean Combs. Both of them grew up in New York without fathers around, and that shared experience created an immediate bond between them. Eventually, Shine signed to Bad Boy Records and what the media hyped up as $1 million deal. To Shine, the opportunity felt bigger than luck. He truly believed hard work and sacrifice had finally started opening doors for him. For years, he had stayed away from drug dealing, worked long hours delivering messages, and attended college classes at night while chasing music on the side. He stayed disciplined because he believed his future depended on it. But once fame entered the picture, that discipline started slipping fast. During his first months at Bad Boy, everything around him exploded. Suddenly, Shine was spending ridiculous amounts of money on luxury cars, giant fur coats, jewelry, and anything flashy he could get his hands on. Even in the flashy rap world of the late 90s, people thought he was overdoing it. At one point, he was literally walking around wearing 5 watches at once. One Bad Boy artist even remembered catching him casually trying to unjam an AK-47 like it was normal. Then tragedy hit again. In 1998, Shine crashed a Mercedes, and one of his friends died in the accident. The guilt completely destroyed him emotionally. He later described himself during that period as feeling like a zombie. The music he recorded afterward reflected that darkness, and even Shine admitted those songs sounded terrible. Sean Combs pushed him hard, telling him raw talent alone wasn't enough. If he wanted real success, he had to learn how to make records people connected with. And once again, Shine locked in after facing adversity. Former Bad Boy producer Harvey Pierre later said, Shine became one of the hardest working artists at the entire label. He practically lived inside the studio. Eventually, all that grinding paid off with his breakout single, Bad Boys. By 1999, Shine wasn't just some hungry rapper trying to get noticed anymore. The industry was already talking about him like he was next up for real. He had the guest appearances, the street buzz, and the kind of reputation that made people inside the music business pay attention the second his name came up. Everywhere around the Bad Boy Records camp, Shine's presence was growing. He carried this image that labels loved, somebody who could blend grimy street energy with mainstream appeal without losing authenticity. At that moment in time, Shine wasn't viewed as some tragic story or cautionary tale. He was an investment, a young artist with huge potential and an entire machine behind him. By late 1999, he was sitting on his self-titled debut album, waiting for the world to finally hear it. The project was packed with stories about street life, violence, sex, hustling, and survival. But interestingly enough, the album actually opened with a spoken word piece called Dear America, and buried inside that intro were little hints of the politician and public figure he would eventually become years later. But before any of that future could happen, one night changed everything. Just days before the new millennium officially started, Shine got pulled into one of the biggest celebrity scandals of the era, the infamous Club New York shooting. At the time, Jennifer Lopez and Sean Combs, who everybody still mostly called Puffy back then, had been dating for a couple years after Lopez split from her first husband, Ojani Noah. Then came the night of December 27th, 1999. Puffy, J-Lo, and Shine all ended up at a Midtown Manhattan party called Hot Chocolate inside Club New York. The energy was crazy. Music booming, celebrities everywhere, bottles flowing, and DJ Goldfinger holding down the music while people celebrated Shine's upcoming album release. Everything looked perfect until around 2:20 in the morning. As Jennifer Lopez was heading toward the exit area, Puffy accidentally bumped into a man and knocked a drink out of his hand with a champagne bottle. That man was Matthew Allen, better known in the streets as Scar, and Scar was not the type of dude you casually disrespect. After that, the stories started getting messy depending on who was telling them. Some people claimed Puffy started throwing money around the club like confetti. Other versions said Scar was the one tossing stacks of cash back in Puffy's direction. Either way, egos got involved, insults started flying, and suddenly the situation got heated fast. Then chaos exploded. Gunshots rang out inside the packed nightclub. People started screaming, ducking, diving under tables, running for exits. By the time everything stopped, 3 people had been shot, 2 men and 1 woman. One victim, hairstylist Natanya Rubin, was hit directly in the face. The others were shot in the shoulder, and instantly, the entire night turned into front-page news. Meanwhile, Lopez and Combs jumped into a 1999 Lincoln Navigator and sped away from the club, but they didn't make it far before police pulled the vehicle over for running a red light. Inside the car, officers discovered a stolen 9mm handgun. Just like that, one of the biggest celebrity couples in America was sitting in police custody. For Jennifer Lopez, the experience became a nightmare. Reports claim she spent hours crying inside a jail cell while police questioned everybody involved. But despite all the attention surrounding her arrest, investigators eventually cleared her completely. Shine wasn't as lucky. Police had already grabbed him outside the club, and prosecutors came hard. He was hit with 8 criminal charges, including multiple counts of attempted murder. While Shine and Puffy prepared for separate trials, something strange started happening. Shine's career kept getting bigger. By the summer of 2000, Bad Boys had completely taken over the streets. The record blasted from car speakers all over Brooklyn, especially around Church Avenue. People loved how raw and authentic he sounded. So when his debut album finally dropped in September 2000, it debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 and eventually went gold. The public was locked in, but the music never really got the chance to breathe on its own. Every conversation about the album somehow circled right back to the shooting, the arrests, the courtroom drama, and the possibility that Shine might spend years behind bars before his career even truly started. That timing gave the entire project this eerie feeling, almost like listeners were hearing the soundtrack to somebody's downfall in real time. Songs like Bad Boys and Bonnie and Shine featuring Barrington Levy became huge records, but people weren't just listening to the music, they were consuming the controversy alongside it. It made the album feel less like the beginning of a superstar run and more like evidence from a future that was already collapsing. In another version of history, Shine probably would have had a long, successful, major label career without interruption, but reality played out differently. And on top of all the legal drama, there was still the constant comparison to the notorious B.I.G. hanging over him. The comparison definitely helped him at first because audiences were still emotionally attached to the whole Bad Boy era and Biggie's legacy. But eventually, it also became a burden. A lot of people struggled to separate Shine from that shadow long enough to fully appreciate his own talent, and the talent was real. He had presence, charisma, lyrical ability, and records that connected in both the streets and the mainstream, but he also carried impossible expectations on his back before he even had time to grow naturally as an artist. The attention around him got so huge that he even landed on Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher. During the interview, Maher pressed him about gun culture in hip-hop, and honestly, Shine answered in a way that surprised a lot of people watching. Instead of glorifying violence, he pointed directly at poverty, economics, and America's larger system. His argument was basically that rappers weren't manufacturing guns in Harlem. They were simply products of environments that already existed long before rap music. It was one of those moments where people briefly saw there was a deeper thinker behind the tough guy image, but the legal system kept moving forward. On March 15, 2001, a Manhattan jury found Shine guilty of assault, gun possession, and reckless endangerment. The judge, Charles Solomon, admitted he had sympathy for the young rapper and acknowledged that Shine had made a terrible decision during one chaotic night. But at the end of the day, the court focused on one fact above everything else. Somebody fired a weapon inside a crowded nightclub packed with innocent people. Shine got sentenced to 10 years in prison. His mother, Frances Myvitt, was devastated. She openly believed her son's legal team cared more about protecting Puffy than protecting Shine. And honestly, a lot of people understood why she felt that way. During the trial, Puffy's defense strategy heavily relied on separating himself from the gunfire entirely. Witnesses were brought in to support the claim that Combs never fired a weapon at all, which naturally shifted more blame onto Shine. Years later, people still debate exactly what happened that night. One major detail that kept fueling those arguments was the fact that shell casings recovered from the club reportedly didn't even match bullets connected to Shine's 9mm handgun. Meanwhile, Jennifer Lopez walked away from the case with no charges sticking to her at all. And as for Sean Combs, his high-powered defense team, including legendary attorney Johnny Cochran, successfully created enough reasonable doubt for the jury to acquit him completely. Despite witness testimony and allegations that Combs tried convincing his driver to take the blame for the gun, Puffy walked free. And in the eyes of many people watching from the outside, Shine became the fall guy. Natanya Rubin, the woman who got shot in the face during the chaos, has continued maintaining over the years that she believes Combs was the one who fired the weapon that hit her. As for Shine, he later explained that what started as a united legal defense slowly turned into him being isolated and sacrificed in order to protect a much bigger celebrity figure. According to him, the fallout from that case destroyed his life and deeply damaged his family. After beating the case, Sean Combs reinvented himself all over again. The Puffy era slowly faded into the background, and now he was calling himself P. Diddy. He came back outside with Bad Boys for Life, celebrating survival like he had just escaped a war zone. Meanwhile, the man who actually went to prison from that entire situation was sitting behind bars, watching the world move on without him. And by that point, Shine wanted absolutely nothing to do with his former mentor anymore. The relationship was dead. He tore up his deal with Bad Boy Records and eventually secured a huge contract with Def Jam Recordings worth around $3 million. Then came 2004 and the release of Godfather Buried Alive. But the album itself felt eerie from the jump. 12 out of the 13 songs had actually been recorded before Shine even went to prison. The only fresh track was a diss record aimed at 50 Cent called For the Record, and Shine literally recorded that verse through a crackling prison phone. The whole project sounded like somebody trying to scream from behind concrete walls. Shine took shots at everybody too. Politicians, the government, the war on drugs, the justice system, and of course Diddy himself. Every verse carried frustration, bitterness, and the feeling of somebody who believed he had been abandoned. And honestly, the rollout for that album was one of the strangest things hip-hop had seen in years. The music almost felt frozen in time. Listening to it was like hearing messages from somebody trapped in another dimension, while the rap game kept evolving without him. But strangely enough, prison didn't kill Shine's fame. It transformed it. Before prison, he was a rising rapper with momentum. After prison, he became almost mythical. People barely even saw him anymore. All they had were old songs, magazine interviews, prison rumors, and endless debates about whether Diddy sacrificed him to save himself. That mystery only made the fascination bigger. Once Godfather Buried Alive dropped, the publicity exploded. The New York Times interviewed him while he was still locked up. Vibe even put him on the cover wearing a green prison uniform. By late 2004, things got even crazier. MTV started filming a documentary about his life, and somehow Mark Wahlberg ended up visiting him inside Clinton Correctional Facility along with other inmates. At that point, Shine had become more than a rapper. He was a symbol. Critics started pointing out how his prison sentence almost became part of the marketing itself. The public stayed obsessed with the story because the contrast was impossible to ignore. Diddy walked free, rebuilt his empire, and kept partying with celebrities while Shine sat in a cell carrying the weight of that entire night. But Shine hated the idea that prison alone made him interesting. To him, the music still came first. Still, prison officials eventually started cracking down on him because he was using prison phones non-stop to promote his career. And New York prison rules were strict. Inmates weren't supposed to run businesses, coordinate media campaigns, or contact reporters freely from behind bars. Officials accused him of breaking multiple regulations, including using fake names on approved contact lists. Then the consequences came down hard. In August 2004, prison authorities stripped away his phone privileges completely and banned him from doing face-to-face interviews. Overnight, Shine basically got cut off from the outside world, but isolation pushed him deeper into something else entirely: religion. While sitting in prison, Shine became heavily devoted to Judaism, which connected back to his great-grandmother's Beta Israel Ethiopian Jewish roots. And this wasn't casual curiosity either. He dove all the way in. He fasted constantly, observed Shabbat seriously, refused visitors during holy periods, and immersed himself in spiritual discipline with the same intensity he once gave the streets and music. The way he described it later almost sounded supernatural. Before religion, Shine said he had already been obsessed with discipline and self-mastery. But once he embraced Judaism, he felt like it unlocked something deeper inside him. Eventually, he legally changed his name to Moses Levi and committed fully to kosher living. And according to him, prison was violent enough to make that faith feel necessary. One story he recalled from prison sounded like something straight out of a movie. During a basketball game on the yard, Shine dunked on a massive inmate who reportedly became furious afterward. The situation escalated instantly, and Shine struck the man after getting hit with the ball. The next thing he remembered was waking up flat on the pavement with only a sprained foot. To him, surviving moments like that felt bigger than luck. He truly believed divine protection was carrying him through prison alive. By 2005, Shine was still behind bars, but now another war was brewing. This time with L.A. Reid and Def Jam. Shine felt completely betrayed by how the label handled Godfather Buried Alive. In his eyes, the album wasn't promoted properly, and he blamed Reid directly for not understanding rap culture the way he understood pop and R&B music. At the same time, New York's Son of Sam laws created another nightmare. Because Shine was a convicted felon connected to a violent crime, the label legally couldn't just hand him profits from his music freely. So now he was fighting both the prison system and the business side of the industry simultaneously. The frustration boiled over into letters and public criticism. Even Russell Simmons stepped into the conversation, publicly questioning whether Def Jam leadership saw Shine as somebody capable of growth and spirituality, or just another street rapper they could profit from. Things got so tense that Jay-Z personally visited Shine in prison after becoming president of Def Jam, hoping to smooth things over. But by then, the relationship was already broken beyond repair. As Shine's prison sentence neared its end, he got transferred to Rikers Island for parole proceedings, before eventually landing at Woodbourne Correctional Facility for the final stretch of his incarceration. Finally, after serving more than 9 years, a Manhattan judge approved his release date for October 6, 2009. But freedom didn't actually come when those prison gates opened. The second Shine stepped outside, federal immigration authorities grabbed him immediately. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement detained him while officials reviewed whether he would be deported back to Belize. Even though his mother was an American citizen and he held a green card, Shine himself had never officially become a U.S. citizen. So now, after surviving prison, another battle started instantly. His family already saw it coming. His legal team had been preparing for months because everybody understood immigration authorities would likely be waiting for him the second he got released. And this time, even his father stepped in publicly. By then, Dean Barrow wasn't just some politician anymore. He was the Prime Minister of Belize. Despite their complicated history, father and son had repaired their relationship enough for Dean Barrow to personally petition David Patterson for a pardon. The family even recruited powerhouse attorney Charles Ogletree, hoping his political connections could stop the deportation altogether. But none of it worked. On October 28, 2009, Shine officially got deported to Belize. America was finished with him. As a convicted felon, he was permanently barred from returning to the United States. Still, when he landed back in Belize, the situation looked almost surreal. He wasn't returning home as some regular deportee. In a strange twist of fate, he came back connected to one of the most powerful political families in the country. His father was now leading Belize, and his uncle already held political influence too. Eventually, father and son fully reconciled. Not long after, Shine was appointed Belize's music ambassador, and suddenly, the former rapper who once dominated Brooklyn streets was representing an entire country. For a while, he genuinely tried turning Belize into a serious music destination. He brought artists through, organized events, and pushed entertainment projects hard. But honestly, most of it struggled badly. One concert in 2011 became especially embarrassing after major artists who were advertised, including Barrington Levy and Def Jam acts, never even showed up. Between failed events, financial issues, and constant controversy, Shine eventually walked away from Belize altogether and headed to Jerusalem. That's when his transformation became even more dramatic. Now he was growing payot, wearing traditional Orthodox Jewish clothing, studying religious texts daily, and surrounding himself with deeply religious communities. He barely drank alcohol anymore and threw himself fully into spiritual life. People around him said his discipline bordered on obsession. Friends recalled him barely sleeping, constantly reading, studying, and working. At the same time, he still desperately wanted music to work. He performed alongside Matisyahu and continued chasing rap success internationally. But prison had damaged his voice badly, and spiritually, he was caught between two completely different worlds. On one side was Orthodox Judaism and strict religious commitment. On the other side was the rap industry, full of nightlife, partying, and chaos. Eventually, even people close to him realized those two lifestyles were colliding in unhealthy ways. Then came another disappointment. In 2012, Shine independently released a mixtape called Gangland, focused heavily on politics, religion, race, and spirituality. The project barely made noise, and around the same time, Shine became increasingly disturbed by racism and discrimination he witnessed inside parts of Israel itself, especially toward Ethiopian Jews and darker-skinned worshipers. That experience forced another major shift in his thinking. Slowly, he started realizing spirituality wasn't really about outfits, strict appearances, or religious performance. To him, faith became more about compassion, honesty, kindness, and how people treated each other. By 2012, Shine was bouncing between major cities around the world before eventually settling in Paris for a while. But even there, he felt empty. He found himself trapped in another cycle, praying, socializing, attending clubs, hanging around fashion people, repeating routines without any real sense of mission behind it. Then came one of the most unexpected moments in the entire story. During Paris Fashion Week, Diddy apologized to him. After years of tension, anger, and silence, the two men finally made peace publicly and even posed together in photos. Shine framed the moment as something bigger than just personal forgiveness. To him, it represented growth between two black men who came from environments where pride and violence usually destroy relationships forever. But even after reconciling with Diddy, Shine still felt lost career-wise. When stars like Jay-Z or Drake came through Paris, he could still hang around them socially, but nobody was really checking for his music anymore. That reality hurt. Then one close friend finally told him something he didn't want to hear. The rap career was over. At first, Shine took it personally. The advice offended him deeply, but eventually, he admitted it was probably the most important thing anybody ever told him, because that conversation forced him to finally stop chasing who he used to be. In 2013, Shine returned home to Belize for good. This time, though, he wasn't coming back as a rapper trying to rebuild fame. He came back trying to rebuild purpose. He moved right back into the same Mesopotamian neighborhood where he grew up carrying waste buckets alongside his mother as a child. Only now, instead of dreaming about escape, he focused on helping the people still living there. He opened community resource centers, funded opportunities for local residents, donated laptops, and brought successful entrepreneurs and academics around local youth so they could see bigger possibilities for themselves. Little by little, Shine transformed from rapper into politician. Eventually, he became vice chairman of his constituency before officially winning a House seat for Mesopotamia in 2020 under the United Democratic Party. Soon after, he became opposition leader in Belize's House of Representatives. And honestly, when looking at his entire journey, the transformation almost feels impossible to believe, because the same young man who once wrote Dear America as a frustrated teenager, crying out for help from a broken system, eventually became somebody trying to change systems himself. Back then, Shine felt trapped by poverty, violence, and circumstance. Now, Moses Barrow spends his days talking about policy, education, student loans, and crime prevention while positioning himself as a future leader of Belize.